Hello, welcome to week 7 of Fern's Fireside. Can you believe we've done this for 6 weeks already and you've all remained so loyal, and it's lovely to hear from you and the people who've enjoyed it. It's just great. I haven't had anything with people who didn't enjoy it, but anyway, So this week it is the newcomer. Now the newcomer in question, sorry about this hair. The newcomer in question is a new vicar in the vicarage in Pendruggan, because Simon and his family have gone to Brazil for a year to do some work with the children of the streets in Brazil. And so who's the new vicar? There is a clue coming in the second line. So here we go. The evening before Mamie Buchanan's corpse was found had been an enjoyable one. Her niece, the Reverend Angela Whitehorn, that's the clue to the newcomer, had thrown a gossipy dinner party for her new parish friends, where it was agreed that her aunt had been the most entertaining newcomer Pendruggan had ever had. This may have been due to her rackety stories and her genuine interest in the lives of others, or, more likely, it could have been her inability to pour anything less than very large measures of alcohol. "Oh, your aunt is an admirable woman," said a squiffy Geoffrey Tipton, the last guest to say his goodbyes on the chilly, moonlit doorstep of Pendruggan Vicarage. "My God, they don't make women like that anymore." Angela nodded in agreement. "They certainly don't." "Geoffrey!" The voice of Mrs. Tipton came from beyond the gate, making both Angela and Geoffrey jump. He turned giddily. "Yes, my love, just coming." He steadied himself with a gnarled hand on the doorframe. "Was thanking the vicar for a splendid party." "You can do that in a letter. Come," commanded Audrey. She may as well have asked him to heel. Geoffrey pushed himself from the doorframe and gave Angela a wobbly wave before staggering towards his wife. Angela gratefully closed the door and walked to the kitchen, where Mamie, the belle of the ball, was gaily polishing off a bottle of champagne. "Good God," she said theatrically. "I thought they'd never leave. Last glass before bed." She pointed the bottle towards Angela. Angela shook her head and started to load the dishwasher. "I've already had too much." Over her shoulder, she said, "You know Mike Bates is in love with you, don't you?" Mamie sank her glass in one. "Yes, he told me. And who can blame him, darling?" Her eyes twinkled with laughter. "I am very fond of him." Robert Whitehorn, Angela's husband, entered with the last of the pudding plates balanced in his hands. "Mamie, you were outrageous. You mercilessly flirted with the dreadful Tipton man." Mamie became her usual heartless self again and leant out of her chair to drop her empty bottle into the recycling crate by the back door. "Me?" she laughed. "Poor dear Jeff, a frightful old bore, but such a sweetheart. That gorgon of a wife of his is hard work." Mamie looked to the ceiling and raised her immaculate eyebrows. Angela, taking the plates Robert was offering, gave her aunt a fond but exasperated look. "You are a heartbreaker, and you got everyone drunk." "Oh, and there I was, thinking I was brightening the dull and unsullied lives of our flock." Mamie smiled impishly. Angela's tired grin shifted into a yawn. "And you are exhausted," Mamie said kindly. "You two go up to bed and I'll clear the last bits up." "Are you sure?" asked Robert. Mamie picked up a tea towel and flapped it at the pair of them. "You've got early church tomorrow, and I can lie in." She kissed her niece and nephew-in-law affectionately. "Now off you go, bed, now." Where does she get her energy from? Robert plumped the pillow under his head, his eyes already closing. "She's always been the same." Angela lifted her legs onto her side of the mattress and pulled the duvet up. "Always." It was Angela who found Mamie's body. She'd woken at about 3:20 with a post-alcohol thirst that needed at least a pint of water. In the dark, she had padded, barefoot and silent, to the top of the stairs and noted a line of light under her aunt's bedroom door. She thought vaguely that Mamie was probably engaged in her usual nightly routine of makeup removal and meditation, so she decided not to disturb her. Her fingers carefully held the smoothly worn stair rail as she counted the 16 treads down to the hallway. She and Robert had been in the vicarage only 6 months, but Angela knew by now most of its foibles and peculiarities. The sticky window in her office, the back door that needed an encouraging kick after rain, and the creaking 3rd and 5th treads. At this hour, all was still and silent. The now familiar warmth of the house wrapped itself around her. The smell of garlic and roast chicken and sherry still hung in the air, and something else. She stopped for a moment and sniffed. Ah, yes, Mamie's perfume, Shalimar. Angela was surprised that it could override even last night's cooking smells, but there it was, the very essence of her aunt. She reached the bottom step, and her naked toes felt the familiar texture of the Indian rug covering the oak floor of the hall. Confidently, she let go of the wooden sphere on the end of the newel post and turned left into the darkness, heading towards the kitchen. It was then that her foot felt something unusual. Soft. Fleshy. Her skin began to prickle. "Mr. Worthington, is that you, boy?" She knew it wasn't the dog. She stood stock still and held her breath, but there was no answering thub of a wagging tail or whiskery nose sniffing her leg. Fear crawled from her stomach, through her bowels and down her legs. She began to shake. She was breathing faster and recognised panic. What should she do? Scared to progress further and tread on anything else that might be lying in the dark, but knowing she had to, she reached her foot forwards, feeling for anything. Oh, what was that? She drew her foot back quickly. "Oh, dear Lord," she whispered, and took 2 quick hops to where she might find the light switch. In the sudden glaring light, she saw her beloved aunt's body. "Robert! Robert!" Robert was dreaming of Venice, sitting in the sun under the shade of a bougainvillea and having lunch alone, watching the beautiful women walk by. Where was Angela? He couldn't remember why she wasn't with him. But never mind, he could sit here without guilt. Of course, Angela would be very cross if she caught him, but it was innocent fun. And then he heard her, upset, angry, her voice coming in distressing sobs. "Robert! Oh, dear God, Robert! Robert!" The vision faded, and he sat up in bed, ready to apologise. It had only been a lunch. Nothing more. Angela would understand. But Angela's side of the bed was empty. He ran his hands through his thick, dark hair and heard her shout again, "Robert! It's Auntie Mamie! She's fallen!" A dose of adrenaline hit him, and he leapt out of bed. 6'2", muscular and naked, he sped onto the landing and looked over the banisters. His wife had one hand to her mouth while the other clutched her nightdress to her heart. He saw the body on the rug, twisted awkwardly, her eyes half open, a bruise spreading on her temple. He knew she was dead. He took the stairs 2 at a time. Stepping round the grim scene, he reached Angela and pulled her to his strong, naked chest. "Darling, don't look. Make some tea. I'll call the police." "She needs an ambulance." Angela pushed her way out of Robert's arms. She stepped carefully over Mamie's feet and went to the phone on the hall table. Checking her breathing. "Check her breathing, Robert, and fetch a blanket. She'll get cold." Robert dashed for the blanket from the back of the sofa, then knelt and checked Mamie's pulse. Nothing. He bent his ear to her nose. She wasn't breathing. "Ambulance, please." Angela's voice broke as the emergency operator asked for details. Robert placed Mamie's lifeless arm gently on her chest and stood up. "Darling, we need the police as well. I'm so sorry. She's gone." Angela took the receiver from her ear and looked at Mamie, lying in her scarlet silk pyjamas, and her legs gave way. Robert took the phone and gave the emergency operator their address and an assessment of what had happened. He put his hand fondly against Mamie's cool cheek before pulling the blanket snugly over her as though she was sleeping. Finally, he collected Angela's small frame in his arms and carried her to the kitchen. Tenderly, he lowered her onto her chair by the Aga. "I'll make tea. The police and ambulance will be here soon." "Mamie," keened Angela, her head in her hands. "I didn't hear her fall, Robert. I should have heard her. Why didn't I hear her?" Darling, it's an accident. Somehow she tripped on the stairs and fell. I don't think she would have known anything about it. He smiled into Angela's green eyes. In a funny sort of way, isn't this so typically her? Exactly the way she would have liked to have gone, after a great party where everyone loved her, and full of gin. That's it. That's the first episode. Tomorrow we go back to see Penny and Simon leaving the vicarage and awaiting the arrival of Angela and her family. Stay tuned. See you tomorrow, 6:30. Take care of yourself. And aren't these light nights nice? See you later. Hello again. How are you? All right, had a good day? I hope so. We're all good here. Pussycats are loving the sunshine. The dog's, well, he's a bit naughty because he keeps getting caught short in my bedroom. He's a bit old though, poor old boy. But funny, isn't it, how he uses Granny's bedroom? Anyway, never mind. Here we go. We are reading The Newcomer. Yesterday we had the prologue of Mamie being found dead at the bottom of the stairs in the vicarage. And because we've got new vicars, we've got a new vicar, Angela, and her husband, because Simon, the old vicar, has taken a year's sabbatical and he's over in Brazil helping the street children there with Penny. So here we go. Chapter 1, 6 months earlier. Penny! Simon Cantor shouted from the bottom of the vicarage stairs, his shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, a sheen of sweat on his brow. Penny! He shouted a little louder. He'd been emptying and clearing his office for the last 3 hours, and it had not put him in the happiest of moods. Penny! What? Her voice from upstairs was slightly irritated. I'm sorting the bloody books in Jenna's room. Where are the bin liners? Under the sink, where they usually are. I've looked and they're not. Oh, for goodness sake, she muttered to herself, and then shouted more loudly. Have you looked in the box by the back door? No. Well, look. Penny was not quite as busy as she was pretending. In truth, she'd been lying on her daughter's bed for most of the morning, surrounded by packing cases and constantly being distracted by long-forgotten possessions. She'd been flicking through her own old copy of Noel Stretfield's ballet shoes. She'd won it at her boarding school. Her headmistress's inscriptions still gave her a tiny thrill of pride. Awarded to Penelope Layton for continued improvement in English literature. Congratulations, Miss Elsie Bird. By the way, in real life, my first headmistress was Miss Elsie Bird, so that's what she said. I adored her. She was great. Anyway, here we go. Penny had had a difficult childhood. Her father had died when she was young, and later she'd discovered the woman she'd been told was her mother was not. It had destroyed her sense of self-esteem and left her with a need for praise and approval wherever she could find it. Even now, reading Miss Bird's dedication to her more than 30 years later, she felt the pleasure of having done well. It wasn't until she'd met Simon in her early 40s that she'd found the wonder of loving and being loved in return. And she, a woman who worked in the febrile, emotionally incontinent, ego-driven world of television, had found all that in a vicar. Now, Simon shouted again from downstairs. They are not there! What aren't there? The bin liners! Penny huffily put the book down and went to go downstairs and to find the bloody bin liners herself when she spotted them. They were where she had put them, at the top of the stairs. Oh, here they are, she called cheerfully, covering her guilt. Simon was grumping up the stairs. Sorry, darling, she said, with a hint of accusation as she met him midway. Someone must have left them upstairs. Simon looked tired. His normally clear, tanned face and chocolate eyes were dulled with worry. Oh, we've got less than a week. She stroked his balding head and kissed his brow. I know. We'll be ready. I promise. I've still got the garage to tackle. What am I going to do with all those tins of old paint? Penny placed a hand on his shoulder. Well, the new people might want them to touch up any scuffs. She wiped a string of cobweb from his eyebrows. I think you need some 11s. Everything will look better after a coffee and a digestive or two. Come on. Taking his hand, she pulled him towards the kitchen. Outside, early spring was dawning on the little patio that Simon had built last summer with the help of the village gardener, known to all as Simple Tony. The flagstones were warming, and a robin was busily building a nest in the early clematis that clambered around the kitchen window. Penny carried the coffee tray outside and balanced it on top of the lichened bird bath. Pulling up 2 tatty wicker chairs, she took the edge of her cardigan and swept away the dried winter leaves and crumbly bird poo from the seats. Don't you do that? I do that. Setting the chairs side by side, she plonked herself down with a sigh, as Simon followed her out with a packet of ginger nuts. Penny pulled her shoulders back and tipped her face to the sun. The sea smells good today. She inhaled noisily, filling her lungs. Simon sat down and opened the biscuits. Ginger nut? She exhaled, shaking her head. I'd prefer a digestive. There aren't any. She looked at Simon, weighing up whether it was worth the risk of contradicting him by getting up and getting the digestives and the larder where she had put them, or just saying nothing. She chose the latter. Not to worry, she said, and took another lungful of air with closed eyes. Simon fiddled with the ginger nut wrapper, running his thumb around to find the elusive tape to pull, and while he did so, looked round at his beloved garden, recalling all the hours that he and Penny had poured into it. The cherry blossom tree, marking Jenna's baptism, the Wendy house under it, the drift of daffodils just budding now, planted several autumns before. Eventually he found the cellophane string and pulled. 6 ginger nuts sprang out and hit the ground. Penny opened one eye. Bugger, she said. He sighed. Are we doing the right thing? He picked up a biscuit and shook the grit off before dipping it into his coffee. Penny exhaled impatiently. Yes. It's Jenna I worry about most, Simon said, looking at the vegetable patch that he really ought to have dug over by now. Taking her away from all this, her home, her garden, her friends, the life she's known. Penny abandoned her deep breathing and gave him a sharp look. How many times are we going to go over this? She snatched up a ginger nut before the beady-eyed nest-building robin got it and bit into it noisily. We are going to Brazil, she said. It's your dream and we're going to go for it. He ran his hand over his head. Am I being selfish? What about you and your work? Before he could take another bleat, Penny was on him. Stop being so sodding negative. I do believe Brazil has running water and electricity and phone lines and the internet. I can run my office from there easily. In fact, it may be better than being here. And Jenna is 7 going on 21 and bursting for an adventure. She takes after you. Simon gloomily drank his coffee. Penny sat up and looked him square in the eye. Do you know what she told me last night? No. She told me that her friends at school were collecting things for the children you will be working with. What things? Oh, hairbands, football shirts, pens, notepads, balls, makeup, stuff that street kids have never had. She's even set up a website with her form teacher, Miss Lumley, so that she can keep them up to date with her blogging and vlogging. Really? Simon's eyes were shining with emotion. Yes. But keep it under your hat and act surprised because I wasn't supposed to tell you. He turned his gaze back to the garden and Jenna's cherry tree. It is going to be all right, isn't it? It's going to be bloody amazing. Penny stretched out to take his hand. Now, I know I'm not always the greatest vicar's wife in the world, but the important thing is that I am your wife and the only one you have. Even the bishop has started to afford me some respect. He managed to look me in the eye the other day rather than my cleavage, last time I saw him. A huge step for mankind. Well, he doesn't understand strong, successful women. Well, he's going to have to. There are a hell of a lot of us about. Supposing the accommodation is even more basic than we've been led to believe, you might hate it. You forget I have spent most of my working life on film locations with a chemical toilet and cold showers. I never get the luxury Winnebago, believe me. Brazil will be sunny, hot, sexy, all the things that you and I could do with. She smiled at him. It is going to be fun. He smiled at her wearily. Dear God, I hope so. Somewhere in the house, the phone began to ring. "Ah, that'll be God now, telling you to buck up," said Penny. "I shall say you're out." Penny headed for the phone in the hall, dodging round a pile of boots and coats ready for the charity shop, and reached for the receiver. "Holy Trinity Church, Pendruggan, good morning." "Penny, is that you?" asked the querulous voice of the bishop. "You were a long time answering." "Well, maybe because we still have the old-fashioned telephone plugged into the wall." "Oh, yes, you must ask my office to sort out a modern cordless one." Penny gritted her teeth. "Yes, we were turned down." "Have I caught you in the middle of something?" "Not at all. We're only packing our lives up for Brazil." "Oh, of course, Brazil. Simon will be marvellous. He's exactly the sort of man for the job. I must say, when I did my ministry in Sudan many moons ago," Penny closed her eyes, preparing to hear another of the pompous old fart's dreary tales of self-aggrandizement. "The Sudan," she said. "How interesting." "Oh, my word, it certainly was. The people who took to me, they came to me immediately, and the more I worked with them in their villages, taking the good news of the Gospels with me, the more they truly loved me. I remember a day when a young woman with a small child on her back came to me and asked in all humility, 'Are you Jesus?'" "Well, I never," said Penny, rolling her eyes at her husband, who was stepping over the coats and coming towards her. "How charming! You must tell Simon. He's right here." "Who is it?" mouthed Simon. "God," she mouthed back. Simon took the receiver from her and shooed her away. "William, how kind of you to call." "Oh, my goodness, time's up." These speed along, don't they? Right, so tomorrow I shall pick up the story at page 13. And I'll see you then. So, have a good night, sleep tight, and I'll see you soon. Bye. There you are. I've been waiting for you, Mr. Bond. Well, here comes our little dog. Hey, come here, boy. Come on. This is the grandson who, when he gets caught in my bedroom. Caught short, you know what I mean? It's not good. Excuse me. Are you going to come and say hello? No, come on. No, never work with dogs, children, etc. Here we go. Now I'm reading The Newcomer, as you know, and this is the bit where Penny and Simon are leaving Pendruggan for Brazil, where they're going to spend a year working with the children, sort of as missionaries, really, for the children in Brazil. Penny collected her coffee from the garden, tucking a couple of ginger nuts into her cardigan pocket, and returned to Jenna's room. She was faced again with the scattered detritus of moving her life halfway across the world. There had been tears and fierce negotiations about what could go to Brazil and what would have to stay behind and go into storage. "But, Mama," Jenna was very persuasive, "Blue Ted won't be able to breathe in a crate." "Oh, yes, he will. Teddies like to hibernate, and it'll be a big adventure for him, too, to be in a big warehouse with lots of other people's teddies." "No, it won't." "It will." "But he'll miss me." "Well," Penny had thought on her feet, "we shall send him postcards." "He can't read without me." "Well, we all have lots of fun reading them to him when we get back." At which point Jenna had burst into tears and thrown herself on the bed with Blue Ted beneath her. It had finally been agreed that Blue Ted and Honey Bear and Tiny Tiger could all go to Brazil in her flight bag, but the Lego, stilts and doll's house had to go into store. Standing now in her daughter's denuded room, Penny knew she only had a few hours to make these last books, games and teddies disappear into storage before Jenna returned home from school. As she worked, her mind picked at the anxiety she felt about leaving Pendruggan. No matter what she'd told Simon, the move to Brazil was not going to be easy. She was a woman who liked to be in control of her environment. She needed her work, her hairdresser, the theatre, shops, and her independence. In Brazil, she would have none of these safe anchors. She had to admit to herself that she would find it hard. Simon, by comparison, would be in his element. He'd been hand-picked to join the missionary team in Bahia to help the abandoned children who lived on the streets. Some were just babies, cared for by other children. They were exploited in every imaginable way. The mission gave them shelter, teaching and food. Penny knew that Simon would plunge straight in and immerse himself totally in the work that he was made for, but she privately wondered how she would cope. When Jenna had first been told about going, she'd cried and run to her bedroom. Mortified, Simon and Penny had followed her, expecting a tantrum and refusal to go, but instead they found her gathering her teddies and telling them that they were needed in Brazil. They watched with awe and pride as she lined them up and told them, "I love you all, you know that, but there are lots of children who don't have a special teddy or a mummy and a daddy, so you are coming with me and I shall let you play with the Brazil girls and boys. But not you, Blue Ted. All right, now Mummy says Daddy is going to be very important. He's going to be in a missionary position." Penny smiled at the memory. And now Brazil was only a week away. The essentials for their new life were already crated and stowed on the deck of a container ship crossing the Atlantic. Penny looked for the big roll of parcel tape and placed the last two of Jenna's belongings, a magic set and a radio-controlled puppy, into the final box, sticking it down securely. "Right, you lot," she said, straightening up. "It's only for a year, 12 little months, and we'll have you out of storage and back here before you know it." She looked around the familiar room. "And you 4 walls, you are going to be home to the new family. Now look after them, and don't forget us." A woman's voice called up the stairs. "Hello? Anyone fancy a sandwich?" Penny went to the landing and looked over the banisters to see the auburn hair and freckly face of her best friend, Helen. "Oh, you are an angel. What you got?" Helen beamed up at her and swung a Marks and Spencer bag. "Prawn salad, cheese and pickle, or cream cheese and cucumber. Crisps, salt and vinegar." Later, the kitchen table strewn with the remains of the ad hoc lunch and glasses of squash, Simon dusted the crumbs from his fleece and stood up. "Thank you, Helen. Would you think me rude if I whizzed off to the tip? I've got the car loaded and I want to empty it before I pick Jenna up from school." "Go for it," Helen approved. Penny chipped in. "There's a pile of bin liners full of rubbish at the bottom of the stairs if you can fit them in." He dropped a kiss onto the top of her head. "No problem. See you later." Penny patted his bum as he went by her. "Jenna loves it when you pick her up." Once Penny and Helen were alone, Helen leant across the table and put her hand over her friend's. "How are you feeling, really?" Penny slumped her head onto the table. "Exhausted, anxious, homesick already. I'd be the same." Penny lifted her head. "Would you? I've tried so hard to keep upbeat for Simon because this is so important to him." "Well, tell me what you're worried about." "Oh, Jenna getting ill, no decent hospitals to look after her, insects in the house, snakes, lizards, robbers, earthquakes." Helen began to smile. So not much then. "And worst of all, I'm going to miss you." Penny gripped Helen's hand. What is a woman without her best friend? The woman who knows all her secrets, who's going to make me laugh, bring sandwiches, wine and gossip. How do you think I'm going to feel without you?" countered Helen. "Who am I going to complain about Piran to?" Penny sniffed and wiped her eyes. "You'll just have to strangle him." "You're right," Helen sighed. "Easier than divorce." "You're not married," said Penny. "Oh, yeah, well, I could walk out on him." "Both of you don't even live together," Penny smiled. "Oh, yeah, thank God," Helen laughed. Penny stood and went to the fridge. "I've got half a bottle of rosé that needs drinking. Fancy a drop?" "Is my name Helen Merrifield?" Penny took 2 glasses from a cupboard and poured equal measures of wine into them. "To me," she said, raising her glass. "To you," replied Helen. She took a mouthful. I wonder if the new vicar drinks." "Probably not. She looks a bit mousy." "No, that's unfair. Shall we say natural? No makeup, very petite. I think she might be one of those women who run for fun." But her husband is a dish." "Oh, did I tell you that?" "Several times." "Well, he is. When we met them at Bishop William's, I couldn't believe how handsome he was. I mean, think Cary Grant with a drop of George Clooney." "Oh, I am." Yeah, and he's nice, charming, and very attentive to Angela. What does he do? I think he said he was a political writer. To be honest, I was so busy looking at him that I forgot to listen to what he was saying. I'm expecting you to get all the lowdown and Skype me with every detail. What about the daughter? Oh, I didn't meet her, but I think she's around 14 or 15, something like that. Probably at the fat and spotty stage. Helen gave Penny a knowing look. You're feeling better. I can always tell. Your inner bitch comes out. As they laughed together, as only old friends can, a wave of homesickness overwhelmed Penny. I do hope we'll be okay, and that they will be happy here, this house, this village. Well, I couldn't have been happier here, and Helen interrupted her before she'd get into panic. You'll be home before you know it. What could possibly go wrong in a vicarage? And with knowing smiles, they settled in for a good old gossip. Don't use the sitting room, Penny yelled 4 days later as Simon put his hand to the door handle. He blinked. Well, I only want to watch the news. You'll have to watch it on the little telly in the kitchen. She steered him away. Also no using the downstairs loo or either of the spare bedrooms as your office. But I need my office. Out of bounds, I'm afraid, said Penny, pushing him towards the kitchen. Helen and I scrubbed this house from top to bottom. Forensics would never know we lived here. But this is slightly ridiculous. Angela and Robert don't arrive until the day after tomorrow, Angela said, exasperated. Penny shrugged. Well, them's the rules, I'm afraid. And tonight's supper is fish and chips from the chip shop because I've cleaned the Aga. And tomorrow night, Helen and Piran are cooking for us, our last supper. Simon took Penny in his arms and squeezed her. I haven't said thank you, have I? Penny tipped her head up to look at her husband. What for? For doing all this for me. His chocolate eyes behind their glasses took in her deep blue ones. For taking on this huge upheaval and not complaining once. Haven't I? I'm sure I have. Shut up. Just thank you. My pleasure. She reached up and kissed him. Now, go and get the fish and chips. Cool. These 10 minutes go quick, don't they? That's another one. Right. What can I tell you? Nothing new. I just hope the dog doesn't do anything ghastly in my bedroom tonight. Have a lovely evening. Sleep well, and I'll see you tomorrow. 6:30. Bye. Say good evening and be nice. Grandson, badly behaved. He's had 3 different owners, I think, but we're his final forever home, whether you like it or not. What was that you said? Don't snore, it's rude. I beg your pardon? Tell me again. What? Is that Mummy coming in? What is it? Your Mummy? Stay here, although you won't. See if I can manage. See if I can do this. I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, here we go. This is the Newcomer, and this is our 4th reading of it. The following evening, Simon, Penny and Jenna trooped across the village green to Helen's little cottage, Gull's Cry, and it was as welcoming as always, sitting in its beautiful garden, the path lined with lavender from gate to front door. Wisteria was starting to break into flower around the eaves, and as ever, a fat candle sitting in a bell jar shone in each of the 2 downstairs windows. The thick front door with its heavy metal dolphin knocker opened before they got to it, and a small Jack Russell bounded up to greet them. The silhouette of Piran Ambrose stood framed in the glow of the front door, spilling from within. Come in, me handsome. He shook Simon's hand. They were old and unlikely friends who had grown up together. Hello, maid, coming out the cold, he said to Jenna, putting his huge fisherman's hand onto the little girl's shoulder. The fire's lit. Hello, Uncle Piran. She smiled shyly at the man she adored and bent down to tickle the little dog. Hello, Jack. Penny entered last and Piran kissed her cheek. All right, Pen? All set for the big day? I think so. Too late if we're not. Helen came from the kitchen, drying her hands on a tea towel, and welcomed them all. Piran, open the wine, would you? And there's a bottle of elderflower cordial for Jenna. Something smells good, sniffed Simon appreciatively. Piran has made his famous lobster curry for you, Helen told them. Couldn't let you go without a proper Saturday night supper in you. Well, that was delicious, Simon said, putting his knife and fork together neatly on his plate. You're right there, just settle down. You'll be eating some different kind of grub in Brazil, I expect, said Piran, wiping up the last of the curry sauce with a slice of French bread. I'm going to miss you, Uncle Piran. Jenna had eaten every scrap. I love your cooking. Now listen, maid, it won't be too long before me and thee are back on Trevay Harbour pulling in those mackerel. Can I gut them when I come back? I'll be 8 by then. Ooh, 8, is it? You're growing up fast. I tell you what, when you get back, I'll have a proper fisherman's knife waiting for you. How about that? Penny butted in. Is that a good idea? Simon stopped her. It's a very good idea. Jenna is growing up a Cornish woman, and a Cornish woman knows how to use a knife and gut a fish. He turned to Jenna. It's in your blood. Is it? She asked, looking at her hands and spreading her fingers. Cool. Absolutely, agreed Piran. Now there's a little tube of Smarties in the sitting room waiting for you. As long as Jack hasn't had 'em, you can sit on the sofa and watch some telly together. Jenna needed no further encouragement and skipped off, calling Jack to join her. It's going to be a big change for her, said Piran, watching them, but it'll do her the world of good. Growing up in a little village ain't always a good thing. Oh, that was in Piran's voice and I didn't do it, did I? It's going to be a big change for her, said Piran, watching them, but it'll do her good. Do the world a good. Growing up in a little village ain't always a good thing. Well, it was good enough for us, Simon reminded him. You couldn't wait to come back after you got your PhD. Cornish history is in your DNA. True. But where would I be if I didn't have you to keep me on the straight and narrow? My best mate, a vicar. I'm still in shock. Helen placed a cup of coffee in front of them. You'd be a bloody rogue without Simon acting as your conscience. He's your Jiminy Cricket. She handed Penny and Simon their coffees and sat down. So how's tomorrow shaping up? Angela and Robert still coming to be introduced to us all? Yes. Simon spooned some brown sugar into his mug. They're staying over in... Are you leaving me? No, sorry. Don't be rude. If you want to get up and walk about, you have to ask. So how is tomorrow shaping up? Angela and Robert still coming to be introduced to us all? Yes. Simon spooned some brown sugar into his mug. They're staying over in Lostwithiel tonight with an old friend of Robert's. I think they're at school together. And then they'll drive over. Should only take half an hour at that time on a Sunday morning. The handover will be the hardest thing, said Penny, but better to keep it short. Oh, you'll have a church full tomorrow, mind, said Piran, smiling. They're a noisy lot round here. They'll be breaking their necks to check out the new vicar. They're desperate to see the woman. Audrey Tipton and her wet husband will be front of the queue, you'll see. Penny laughed. You are so right. And Queenie. I was in the shop the other day and she was desperately mining me for information. Oh, God, she'll bring out the ancient mothballed fur coat for the great occasion, laughed Helen. The fur, and perhaps the green velvet hat with the feathers and the net veil that she thinks makes her look like the Duchess of Cornwall, chuckled Penny fondly. How does she keep going with the post office and all those cigarettes she smokes? I do worry about her. How old do you think she is now? Helen asked. Well, she came here from the East End as an evacuee as a young girl, said Simon. So she must be... He shut his eyes and calculated. About 85-ish? A chill ran through Penny. I hope nothing happens to her while we're away. Helen tutted. Nothing is going to happen to her. She's pickled in nicotine and her mind is as sharp as a razor. She can still add up quicker than a bookie. I promise you she's not going anywhere. Mama, a tired Jenna wandered in, cuddling little Jack like a baby. His paws were limp and his eyes blinking. Could you pretend to be Jack? His paws were limp and his eyes blinking. Let you know. We'll call you. Can we go now? Piran lifted Jack from her. Bloody dog, spoiled he is. He ruffled Jack's ears and kissed his nose. He loves that dog more than he loves me, said Helen, shaking her head. Well, I've known him longer than I've known you. We share history. Bye-bye, Jack, said Jenna sleepily. Bye-bye, Uncle Piran. You won't forget my fisherman's knife, will you? Certainly not. Auntie Helen and I will have it here the minute you get back. Saying their goodbyes, Simon scooped Jenna up in his arms and led his beloved little family back to the vicarage. Later, snuggled in bed with the lights out, Penny had a sense of foreboding. She fidgeted over to Simon, whose warmth comforted her. He reached an arm around her. "You okay?" he asked sleepily. "Yeah, just thinking about how different the village might be when we get back." "Oh, it'll be the same as always," Simon told her. "Nothing changes in Pendruggan. Take it from me." That night, Penny had a torrid dream. Their container ship was sunk by a terrible Atlantic storm, taking all their possessions to the seabed. Her father was there and tried desperately to save everything, but after many dives was finally swallowed into the murky depths. She woke up gasping, but as she lay in her bed next to her sleeping husband, she heard the high-pitched wail of a strong wind coming off the sea and the rattle of heavy rain outside. She turned over to be closer to Simon and tried to shake off the bad feeling that still lingered. "It's just an ordinary Cornish storm," she told herself, "and a simple anxiety dream. Everything will be okay." Eventually she did sleep, while outside the storm raged, shaking Jenna's cherry tree and running up the beach on Shellsand Bay to wash away the great walls of the sand dunes. But when Simon woke, first as he usually did, the sky was the cleanest, washed-out blue without a cloud. The sun was rising and bringing with it the first promise of summer warmth. In the kitchen, as he waited for the kettle to boil, he opened the back door and saw the wind-strewn leaves of Jenna's cherry tree on the lawn and the slender necks of the daffodils bent to the earth. But today was not a day to grieve over nature. Today he needed all his emotional strength to hand his flock over to their new caretaker, Angela. Another couple of pages. Oh, we've come to chapter 2. Let's start chapter 2, shall we? Why not? To hell with it. Well, the suspense was killing Robert. Are we going to Cornwall? Angela's heart was racing, the pulse in her throat throbbing. She lifted her head from the letter in her hand and said in a quivering voice, "Yes." Robert ran to where she stood in the hall. "Woohoo!" He lifted her off her feet. "Congratulations." He squeezed her hand and without letting her go, called up the stairs, "Faith, Mum got the job." Yes, she did. Thank you. She got the job. Difficult with the dog. Hang on. "We're going to live by the sea for a whole year." "Great," came the muffled reply. "Well, come down and I'll make a celebratory breakfast. Bacon sandwiches all round." "Dad, it's Saturday. I want to sleep." "Let her be," said Angela fondly. "But it's already 11. She should be down here with us, celebrating." "Darling," she kissed the top of his handsome head, "put me down and we'll have breakfast together. Just the two of us. I'm so proud of you." He gave her another tight hug, then set her back on her feet. A short while later, Robert placed the bacon sandwich in front of her. "Tea or coffee?" "Oh, tea, please." Angela bit into the soft white bread and butter and found the bacon crispy and warm, the best way. "The food of the gods," she said. "Tea, please." "Oh, I've done that bit. It's you. You're disturbing me." Here we go. Robert put a mug of tea in front of her, then sat down with his own sandwich and coffee. "The vicarage is going to feel huge after this little house." "It will." Angela looked out of the kitchen window onto their tiny but neat courtyard garden. "I shall miss this, though." "Oh, I won't," Robert said through a mouthful of bread. "Farewell, West London. Hello, West Coast." "You'll miss work." "Nope." "Yes, you will. It's your meat and drink." He wiped his mouth with a piece of kitchen towel. "We've talked all this through. Now finish your sandwich." "When will you let work know?" "Oh, I'll talk to Gordon on Monday. It won't come as a surprise. He told me you'd get the job." "Oh, he's been so good to you." "Yeah, he's a good bloke." Angela stirred her tea. "And you're sure about having a year off?" He put the last of his sandwich in his mouth. "Absolutely. All those dark, rainy nights standing on College Green or outside the door of number 10, shouting questions that won't or can't be answered to politicians who are as clueless as the rest of us. Well, I'm not sure that Cornwall will offer any of the excitement you're used to. But I shall have a new job. House husband extraordinaire." "Not quite as exciting." He shook his head. "Look, You have always been there for me, never minding when the office ring at ungodly hours to send me out on a story, never refusing a camera crew a bed for the night, always taking the burden of domestic responsibility. It's my turn to look after you. Angela put her hand on his knee and her head on his shoulder. I am so lucky. Well, the good people of What's-it are luckier. Pendruggan. He raised his coffee mug. To my wife, the vicar of Pendruggan. She laughed. Well, vicar for a year anyway. I hope I can do it. Robert grew serious. Darling Ange. He took the hand she had on his knee and lifted it to his lips. What you will be doing is 1,000,000 times more worthwhile than any television news report. You are doing yourself and me and Faith proud. I hope Mum would be proud of me too. Oh, she's smiling down on you as we speak. All right, you can go now. And let you go. You've got things to do, yeah. So there he is. And there we are. One more to do this week. What will happen next? Will we meet Mamie, the woman who died at the beginning? But are we about to meet her? I don't know. I can't remember, but I shall check it out. Hey, have a lovely evening. And yeah, thanks for being here. I'll see you soon. Bye. Here we go. This is the Newcomer. This is the final chapter I'm going to read for this week, and then we move on to another book next week. But I finished around chapter 2, but I've skipped a couple of chapters because I want you to meet Mamie, the person who was found dead at the beginning. So there's no spoilers. But here we go. Chapter 5. The vestry key, heavy and old, had a knack to it that Simon had showed her, but Angela now couldn't remember. The previous vicar told me the trick, but she turned the key and wiggled the old latch to no avail. I can't think what it was. Give it to me, said Mamie. Angela stepped aside as her aunt lifted the latch and pulled the door up and outwards. She turned the key. The door opened smoothly. Yes, I think it's one of those doors that changes with the weather, she said to an astonished Angela. You'll get used to it. She stepped into the vestry. God, it's cold in here. The heating's on a timer. Angela was looking for the light switch. Just a couple of hours twice a day to keep the old place ticking over. She found the old brass light switch and flipped it down with a pleasing clunk. A dim, unshaded single bulb hanging from the ceiling began to glow. It'll warm up in a minute. Let there be light and all that, said Angela, hoping that Mamie wouldn't hate everything. And I think the bank of light switches over by the door there turns on the main lights. Mamie peered at the plastic panel and pushed each switch down. Angela opened the inner door to the church and found the nave and the choir fully lit. Oh, good! They are the right ones. Mamie walked in and took in the beauty of the old church with the late morning sun making the jewelled stained glass windows glow. Taking her time, she stepped towards the altar, heels clicking on the cardinal red floor tiles. She gazed up at the vaulted ceiling, motes of dust drifting through the sunbeams. It's beautiful, she breathed. Imagine all the weddings and baptisms and funerals that have taken place here. She turned to Angela. It's perfect, and you are perfect for it. An anxious Angela asked, So you like it? Mamie sat on a pew. Darling, I am bursting with pride. Would Mum like it? Angela asked as she sat next to Mamie. She'd hug herself with joy. Mamie put her feet up on the pew in front of her. Bloody cold, obviously, but this is exactly where you belong. I can feel it. There is good karma here. I like the smell, too. Beeswax. God, if your mother were here, she'd be polishing every day. Angela grinned. She pointed at a needlepoint kneeler lying at her feet and examined the motif of a lamb watching a bright star in a night sky. Wouldn't she love making one of these? Mamie nodded. Oh, yes. She'd have the Stitch and Bitch Club up and running, knitting for beginners, forcing the poor grannies and young mums into creating hideous pram blankets and woolly hats. She sighed. I miss her. Angela looked towards the altar and sighed too. Well, this is one of those times when I want to ring her, tell her all about it. I find myself actually reaching for the phone at times. Let her know how Faith is doing. How happy I am with Robert. Silly, isn't it? Mamie took her niece's hand. I do the same, very often. I miss her more than I can say. I have so much to thank her for. She rummaged the depths of her pockets. 3 years this October. She pulled out a packet of cigarettes and a gold lighter. Can I smoke in here? Probably not, but I won't tell. Mamie lit up and blew a plume of smoke into the still air, then turned her concerned eyes towards Angela. How are you? Angela watched the smoke rise into the air. Okay. Only okay? Well, I haven't cried for almost a fortnight. And the tablets? Angela looked at her hands. Good. Half the dose now. Dr. King keeps an eye on me. And who will keep an eye on you while you are here? Well, I can call Dr. King any time, but we generally chat once a week. It helps. Sometimes I'm fine, sometimes I'm drowning in the grief of missing Mum, and other times I'm totally numb, but Dr. King says all that's normal. Do you talk to Robert when things are difficult? I try not to. It worries him, and he feels helpless, so... Angela rubbed at her forehead, not wanting to break down in front of Mamie. When we were little, your mum and I, she was the good daughter. If there was washing to hang on the line, she'd do it. If Mum needed her feet rubbed, it was her she wanted. It caused more than a little sibling rivalry between us, I can tell you. Angela smiled. Mum told me you were a bit of a rebel. A bit? Well, the uncomfortable truth is, I was jealous of her. Her beauty, her sweetness, her brains, her smooth complexion. She had no need to rebel. Everybody loved her. She told me she envied your independence. Oh, I was independent, all right. Lipstick, boyfriends, the Rolling Stones, cigarettes, gin, insisting that everyone call me Mamie rather than Marjorie. Angela laughed. Is it true that you tried to get Mum to change her name too? Oh, yes. How could I have a sister called Elsie? I went on and on at her. Ellie, you must be called Ellie. Mamie and Ellie sounded infinitely better than Marjorie and Elsie. And yet you were so close as you got older. We were. She was my very best friend. I could tell her anything and she'd never judge me. Angela nodded. She told me that when Dad died, you came straight home to be with her. Well, where else would I be? Anyway, being a chalet girl in Cloisters might have sounded good, but it was a terrible job. The men were all randy but ugly, and the women were all skeletal bitches. Angela laughed. I can imagine you arriving all glam in your white salopettes and fur boots. I brought her a bottle of Nina Ricci L'air du Temps from Duty Free to cheer her up. Mamie inhaled her cigarette deeply, then stubbed the butt on the tiled floor. She noted Angela's raised eyebrows. Oh, don't worry, I'll pick it up before we go. So I gave her the perfume and she hugged me for it, and shortly after, well, we discovered you were on the way. Angela bent down and picked up the discarded cigarette. What would she and I have done without you? Well, you'd have been called Tracy for a start. What? Yep, it was the name of the midwife who delivered you. Terrible idea, so I gave her some better options. Sadie, Eloise, Tuesday. Tuesday? Well, yes, you were born on a Tuesday. Anyway, she said no to all of them, and then I thought of Angelina because you're such an angel, but your mum preferred Angela, so here we are. And as it happens, the perfect name for a vicar, don't you think? Well, I'll be happy with being a half-decent vicar. Mamie put a comforting arm around her niece and kissed her hair. Darling, your mum and I couldn't be more proud of you. Thank you. Angela's eyes pricked with tears. If I had been incredibly selfish... I wonder if I have been incredibly selfish, asking Robert to take a year out, disrupting Faith's school life. Now stop that. Mamie reached for her bag and drew out her packet of cigarettes. That is self-indulgent nonsense, and you know it. She lit another cigarette, and with it between her teeth, she said, You, my girl, are a brave and wonderful woman. Robert will survive. In fact, I think he's very grateful to be out of his rut for a bit. It's not a rut, Mamie. The Prime Minister calls him Bob. The BBC are thinking of sending him to Washington to be their correspondent. He's important. I'm just a rookie vicar who's landed at a tiny rural parish and who isn't so certain it's the best thing I could have done. Oh, you might like to have a few joss sticks burning in here, Mamie said. Don't change the subject. I'm trying to tell you how scared I am. This could all turn out to be a huge disaster. Angela clenched her hands anxiously. My darling girl, I may not have your faith in the same faith you have in God, but whoever she is, she has faith in you. This is simply a test of that faith. Angela angrily brushed away a stray tear. Well, it's hard, believing in something that others think is a fantasy. People judge me, think I'm naive, mad. Who thinks that? You, Robert, Faith, old friends. I've been asked so often, if there's a God, why does he allow war and violence? I can only say that we were given the 10 Commandments to live by, but God gave us the free will to follow them or not. Not much of an answer, is it? Mamie sat silently mulling this over and then said, if I believe in anything, it is the innate goodness that lies inside humans. You will lead this parish by example. Angela took a deep breath, then sighed. I'll try. You're only human. Yeah. So what about some joss sticks in here? No. Angela smiled weakly. Why not? Mamie shrugged. Because I am an ordained priest in the Christian church, not an old hippie like you. Oh, so pompous and pious, Mamie teased. There's nothing wrong with a joss stick. Great for meditation. Why wouldn't they be great for prayer? Tell me where in the Bible God says, let there be no joss sticks. Fire hazard, Angela sniffed. And please don't stub that cigarette out on the floor again. Sorry. Mamie stood and walked up the aisle. Nice vibe in this building. I can see you bringing fun and spirit to this place. It may not be an inner city area, but it will have its own problems. Humans like to make a mess of their lives, and all human mess will be here exactly as it is in any other parish. She walked back to where Angela was still sitting. All joking apart, darling, I know you will make a difference, whatever that difference may be. Too late for me, of course. God gave up on me years ago, but he likes you. He likes all of us, even you, Angela said fondly. Oh, don't try and convert me. It's much too late now. Let's get out of here. I want to see the beach. So that's a flavour of how Mamie is. I'm so sorry about this hair. As soon as those hairdressers open up, I'll be there. Anyway, that's it. Next week, I'm going to be reading my newest book. This one comes out in paperback any minute, I think. This one's called Daughters of Cornwall, and I'm very proud of this one because this one was my first #1 Sunday Times bestseller. Thrilling, and you did that for me, so thank you.